In this episode of the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast, Leif, Thulin, and I, we're going to talk about Cooper Flagg, the number one pick in the 2025 NBA draft. Yes, it hasn't happened yet. You can, I don't want to say pencil it in because you can erase a pencil, but you can mark it down that Cooper Flagg will be the number one pick in next week's draft. But Leif is here to talk about some of the best case scenarios for Cooper Flagg. Also going to talk about how he fits into Dallas's lineup and what is Cooper Flagg's trajectory. Big shout out to each and every person that has made the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast your first listen of the day. I'm your host, Rafael Barlowe, along with my co-host, the man that watches more college basketball. I was going to say NBA basketball, but you do watch a lot of NBA basketball too. And a lot of tennis.
Oh, yeah.
So,
a lot of tennis. Probably more tennis than NBA right now. But the college basketball definitely is the one where the hours get churning and I don't sleep enough.
Yeah, Leif watches a ridiculous amount of college basketball and remembers a lot of stuff about college basketball. Well, that's why he's on, because he is like the for real college basketball expert, but he also knows how to scout. But before we get into this episode, I want to let you know that if you are not subscribed to the Locked On NBA Big Board YouTube channel, please subscribe, like, share, comment, and click the bell so you can be notified every time we drop an episode, because we might go live a few more times between now and the 2025 NBA draft, which is just a few days away. We're recording this on a Friday afternoon. The draft is on Wednesday. I don't know when the draft starts. I'm assuming 7 o'clock Central, but we already know where Cooper Flagg is going. They don't even need to do like the pre-draft show. They should already have his jersey hung up. I mean, he should already be sitting on the stage when Adam Silver walks across. Like, what is the point of the draft starts and Adam Silver saying the Dallas Mavericks are on the clock, and then they talk about whatever? I mean, just hand the man his jersey. We knew he was going number one as soon as the Mavericks won the lottery. So with that being said, what are Cooper Flagg's best outcomes? Flagg was the number one pick, the projected number one pick coming into the season. And in my opinion, he lived up to the hype. Actually, he exceeded the expectations. 19.2 points, 7.5 rebounds, 4.2 assists, 1.4 blocks, 1.4 steals. Shot 48% from the floor, 38.5% from three, 84% from the foul line. He exceeded all my expectations.
Oh, by far. I mean, I've said this a couple times, but he averaged 26 and 12 against top 25 competition as a 17-year-old. And then he turned 18 and he was even better. Like, that's so hard to do. But the other part that's so impressive is I knew he was going to be able to score about 19 points a game. Didn't know it would be as frequent, but what impressed me is the development of how efficiently he scored it. He did so off the dribble from the mid-range. He did so with using force, superior speed, knocked down open threes, did so creating his own shot, came off screens, was a pick-and-roll distributor, was one of the best defenders in the entire country, rebounded, pushed the pace. Like, he did everything well. And I've mentioned this quote a couple times, but Brian Scalabrine has known Cooper Flagg for a while, and he says he's like a supercomputer. He processes something and is able to implement it the next day, and that's what differentiates good players from great players, is they can, improve the game and realize what they need to do. And he says Flagg processes faster than anyone he's been around. And Cooper Flagg was not supposed to be a good shooter. Maybe not even an average one, because he had to retool his jump shot, and like that's difficult to do when you're playing with Duke on your shirt. Like you're expected to be great immediately, so retooling a shot is not something you want to do in the middle of the season. But he shot great. Like, his shooting numbers are among the top 7 or 8 in the first round of the draft, maybe even higher, because you don't shoot 80%, 80+%, and 35+% from three. Oh yeah, he's 4 percentage points better than both those parameters at both of them. So like, he shot great. He's defensively great. He offensively can get downhill. He can distribute. I'm a huge believer in Cooper Flagg. And my biggest point to answer your whole question about exceeding is what I wanted to touch on. But what he can be is, I've said this for a little while, he reminds me of Jason Tatum, in the sense that Jason Tatum, in his years in the NBA, he comes in and he was really solid right away. But what has differentiated him the last 5 years, where he's been a first-team All-NBA guy, is offensively, he can be the initiator and score 27 points per game without forcing too much. And he can turn himself into a very good distributor. I think Flagg's already on the same par as a distributor as Jason Tatum. Tatum's a better shooter. Still, like I'll get like current Jason Tatum is a better shooter than current Cooper Flagg. And I think that Cooper Flagg is a better defender, but Jason Tatum is an all-NBA caliber defender playing switchable 1 through 5 defense. And that's what Cooper Flagg can do. He can be a 1 through 5 defender. He can be an initiator that scores 25 points per game and is a 7 assist guy in his career. Like I think he can be 25, 7, and 7 at some point in his career. And I don't know if he'll ever be the best player in the NBA, but I think he'll always in his prime years be a top 5 player in the NBA.
So I want to play a little devil's advocate here. And it's mostly like asking you, what are your thoughts on some of the questions or concerns I see about Cooper Flagg, right? Do you feel that when you first made the Jason Tatum comparison, that people thought you were crazy, or it was kind of like, wow, that's one I never heard of? Do you think Flagg doesn't get the credit from some people as a scorer because it doesn't look a certain way? Like, I feel like the people that were not as impressed with him is because maybe, stylistically, it wasn't like Kevin Durant or Carmelo Anthony. It wasn't like Michael Beasley. It wasn't as explosive as Zion Williamson. With all that being said, I do think there's some people that still have some concerns about his scoring, even though he was efficient. But do you think it's all because it just didn't look a certain way?
Well, I think his scoring was more efficient than Jason Tatum's at the same level. Like at Duke, Jason Tatum settled too frequently. The reason I had Jason Tatum 1 back then is because I said, well, if he can take those shots and look confident taking them, same with Banchero, then I'm a believe that they can do it at the NBA because they have that ability in their bag. Flagg didn't have inefficiency because he's like a supercomputer. He only took good shots, and he's able to score in a plethora of ways. So do they score identically? No. But the reason I see that as the better comparison for him than some others like Kawhi Leonard, which I don't dislike. James said that in like November, and I tweeted right back to him. I said, oh, okay, I'm on board. But the reason I likened him to Jason Tatum around January was I see Jason Tatum play NBA games, and I watch him play, and I say, great, this guy handles the ball, draws difficult matchups, and still creates advantages for himself and teammates. I watched Cooper Flagg the very next day, and I said, wow, he does the exact same thing. Defensively, he's a nightmare. I think Flagg can be a better defender than Jason Tatum is. And like I mentioned, I think Tatum is a top 15 defender in the NBA. And then I see his facilitating. That's something that Jason Tatum's had to work extremely hard to become good at. And not just good, but very good at. Cooper Flagg has that vision already innately in him. And I think he's ahead of where Jason Tatum was when Tatum came into the NBA. And Tatum was one of the most polished offensive bag type scorers that there's been. Like he was so skilled when he played at Chaminade. Flagg was more rudimentary skill set, used athleticism and willpower to score. And I think that's why I believe in Cooper Flagg's ability to get so much better so much, because he became a refined scorer. Even with moving parts, like his shot was changing and he was still an efficient, refined scorer. So I believe in his processing and his ability to improve so much that I think he'll be initially better than Tatum was. And I think he has a higher ceiling than Jason Tatum does. And he's been 4 or 5 time first team All NBA. And that's why I see that as more than a Kawhi Leonard, where Kawhi Leonard scores in a mechanical, robotic sense of he's just going to be stronger than you. He's going to get to his spot and elevate. I think Flagg's going to do so in the supercomputer way of I'm going to see what the best outcome is for the team, process it all, find the advantage for myself, and get it. So I'm super high on Cooper Flagg. I'm absolutely disgusted that the Mavericks won the lottery still. I think that was the worst thing that happened for basketball ever. But that's aside from the point. And I'm not even speaking that as a sour Jazz fan. I just can't believe he got rewarded for trading Luka Doncic. But the point I'm trying to make is right away he can be an all-star caliber player, and it looks like you got the guy who can take you to a playoff series from year one with a guy like Anthony Davis there, and then Kyrie comes back, and so it's a really, really interesting situation that Cooper Flagg finds himself in, and I think he's going to be a very impactful player from day one, and then a superstar from season 2-3 onward.
All right. Up next, I want you to double down on the comment you made about Flagg and the Mavericks in the playoffs, because there are some people that still have some concerns about who he is and what is his best case scenario, what is his best outcome. So I definitely want to pick your brain on that. Who could Cooper Flagg be if he reaches his maximum potential? Shopping for a new car should be exciting and not exhausting, but between the confusing prices and the hidden fees, it can actually feel pretty overwhelming. That's why I love using car gurus. They help you cut through the noise and show you the best deals with full confidence. They have over 4 million listings, and Car Gurus has more new and used cars than any other major online marketplace in the US. They verify dealers, they provide real price analysis, and give you the tools and the data you need to make the right choice without second guessing yourself. So if you need a deal that you can trust, Car Gurus makes it easy to compare vehicles side by side with unbiased deal ratings. And the best feature is that they have price drop alerts. So you know exactly when the perfect car is available for your budget. Plus, they have in-depth vehicle details that will give you peace of mind before stepping onto any lot. And it is no wonder that SimilarWeb estimated that the traffic data shows Car Gurus is the #1 most visited car shopping site. So buy or sell your next car today with cargurus.com. So go to cargurus.com to make sure your big deal is the best deal. Again, cargurus.com. All right, second segment. So what is Cooper Flagg's best outcome in your opinion? James and I, we did a live a couple days ago, and I read a comment where someone said, I would not take Cooper Flagg #1 because he's Andre Iguodala, and I wouldn't take Andre Iguodala #1. Now, I try to see everybody's opinion. I don't want to just quickly dismiss it because I may not agree with it. However, with that one, I get where he's coming from. A toolsy guy that does a little bit of everything, contributes to winning, but is he like your closer? Is he, the top dog on your team? So with that being said, do you think Cooper Flagg, obviously I guess basically you say you do if you compare him to Tatum, but do you get the thought process behind that of why someone compared him to Andre Iguodala?
I do. I get the sense of like, okay, he's really good defensively. He's got the intangibles, but I feel like it's almost a worse case. And that's a guy who's maybe a Hall of Famer. I just don't think that Cooper Flagg has a game that's limited by those around him. And Iguodala blended in, and his best years were with Philly in terms of his own individual stuff. But when he was best employed, it was as a tertiary, a fourth option, as someone who was supplementing an amazing offense already. I don't think Cooper Flagg ever is the supplementary piece. He is the piece. He's the guy that everything's orchestrated around. There's a world in which he's not the best scorer on a team and he's helping them score, but I think he may still be the most valuable player on the team in the sense that he's defensively going to be excellent. I think he's going to be able to create. And I don't think it's crazy to say by the end of his rookie contract, like 4 years from now, he's averaging 25, 6 and 6, or and then 8 years into his career, he's 27, 7 and 6. Like, I really don't think that's crazy because he's going to, the NBA is playing at a faster pace. So those numbers who are going to be like 27, 7 and 7 is LeBron James, like that's crazy. But the NBA is going faster and versatility is more and more prioritized. And I think he's going to kind of be part of the transition to point forwards who clear the glass and push the pace down the floor and pass the ball. So I don't know if he's going to be the world's best closer because, is he a natural scorer like you mentioned of the ilk of Kevin Durant? Probably not. But he works so hard and creates those advantages, and he's got such determination, tenacity, and just a track record of massive improvement that I have a hard time seeing him being anything less than a multiple-time All-Star.
What are your thoughts on this? And just based off what you said about maybe not being the closer, is he Kevin Garnett on the Celtics, where he was the guy that set the tone? It was Pierce's team, but do you think that's like the role he could be? But not to discount what Kevin Garnett did in Minnesota. I think he was an MVP. They got to the Western Conference Finals once, but Garnett could score. He put up good numbers, but you never felt like that's what he wanted to do. He didn't want to have to average 30. He wanted to make everyone around him better. And that's why that Boston situation was good for him, even though the Boston Celtics in their one championship, you think that they were a dynasty the way they carried themselves afterwards. But with that being said, do you think that's a fair role for him?
I see the point, and I've actually heard people liken him to Kevin Garnett because of the determination, the mentality. And I get that. And I think the one similarity is that he will put team success over his own individual. Like, there are not a lot of people I guarantee that from, having just watched him play college basketball. But man, is he like, he's a relentless worker, unselfish player. So I do see that, but I don't think it's fair to say that that was like the true Kevin Garnett. And I know I'm young, but Kevin Garnett and the Timberwolves was a problem. And I see more of that from Cooper Flagg than I do as a guy who blends in. Yes, he was the tone setter. Yes, he was incredibly impactful for Boston. And this is many of my formative basketball watching years. I loved watching those Celtics teams. And Kevin Garnett, even then, I appreciate it. But I think Cooper Flagg is going to take a larger role than what Kevin Garnett did in the offense, because I would argue he was the third offensive option on that team. And Rondo was such a point, like a floor general, that Garnett's intangibles were not necessarily fully showcased. Like, Rondo was even more vital to the offense than Garnett was. So I don't think he'll ever be a third or fourth option. I'd be even a little surprised if he's, by the time he's in his prime, a second option. Like, I think he will have the reins even after working with Kyrie Irving and Anthony Davis. I think it'll be his show by year 3 and 4. I think maybe year 2, he can do some of those intangible things in the way that Chet Holmgren does to help the Thunder out. Like, I think Chet is more similar to KG in Boston than Cooper Flagg is.
How does he fit into Dallas's lineup just based off of the roster today? And let's just assume Kyrie is healthy. Do you go Kyrie, Cooper Flagg at the 2, PJ Washington at the 3, Anthony Davis at the 4, and Derek Lively at the 5? And I know somebody probably rolled their eyes when I said Cooper Flagg at the 2. However,
I don't hate that. I might play Najee Marshall at the 2 and Flagg at the 3, but like, PJ deserves to start too.
That's what I'm saying. PJ deserves to start. He was very instrumental in Dallas making it to the Western Conference, or beating Oklahoma. Was it Oklahoma City or the Timberwolves? Well, I think they
beat the Timberwolves to make it. Yeah, they beat OKC in the semis.
But it was the threes that he made against OKC. He played well against the Wolves, and then the finals, he wasn't as good as he was in the previous 2 series. But he was a very big piece to Dallas making that run. The team changed once they made the trade for him at the deadline. So I think he's a valuable piece. Obviously, with Cooper coming in town, things are going to change for PJ. Anthony Davis doesn't want to play the 5. So those 2 are going to start at the 4 and the 5. So with that being said, will we see Cooper Flagg at the 2?
I'm all for jumbo size guards. Like, I love big guards. So I'm all for that. I think defensively, you don't sacrifice anything. Like, sure, he may not be as fleet of foot as some of the 2 guards in the NBA, but he's got the abilities and intangibles and intelligence to make the most of that. And I think that could be a defensively menacing lineup. Like, PJ Washington hounded guards in that postseason you referenced. He was guarding full court because they didn't want to tire out Luka or Kyrie. So they're going to have a lot of guys who can do a lot of different things defensively. Like, Anthony Davis is one of the most switchable defenders in the NBA. And yes, what he hangs his hat on is his rim protection, but it's because he's able to switch and lure you into taking shots that he can still impact. Flagg will be able to do the same thing, funnel into those bigs. I don't mind that whatsoever. I really like Najee Marshall as a player, and that's why I suggested him as a starting 2 guard and Flagg at the 3. But I'm all for Flagg starting at the 2. I have absolutely no qualms with it.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. And even with Kyrie out, I wonder, does Jason Kidd, remember, this is the same Jason Kidd that played Giannis at the point. He helped really develop Giannis's skills as a ball handler. I mean, Giannis came into the NBA with those skills, but Kidd really gave him the confidence. And people thought it was crazy at the time. I wonder if he's going to allow Cooper to run some minutes at the 1. But one of the things that makes me wonder if that happens is there's a totally different timeline in a sense. And I don't know what Dallas's timeline is right now, because when the Luka Doncic trade was made and some of the chatter afterwards was the Mavs have a short window. It is like win now. Flagg is expected to help them, at least defensively, but I wonder how much of their timeline is going to shift and prioritize developing Cooper Flagg as opposed to just trying. I mean, obviously, you want to find a blend of winning and development, but I guess what I'm trying to say is, will they play Cooper some minutes at the 1 until Kyrie comes back?
Well, they should, because their timeline is the next 15 years, because it's the most disgusting misservice of a lottery I've ever seen. It revolts me. I saw that we had to talk about Dallas, and it disgusted me, because Dallas had the win now situation, which was short-sighted and idiotic, and they got rewarded for it. So now they can win the once Kyrie Irving comes back in year 2 for Cooper Flagg. They can actually win a title, because I think Cooper Flagg will be a near all-star player. They'll have probably a Kyrie Irving and Anthony Davis-led team with young up-and-coming players like Najee Marshall, like Derek Lively, and whoever else they want to go for. And you know what's really, really saddening about this, is from someone who's from a small market fan base, is that the CBA is supposed to make things more fair. And you're seeing it start to pan out with OKC and Indiana. But you get a guy who's the number 1 pick, so he's going to be a near all-star by year 2. That's how good Cooper Flagg is, if not an all-star. And his contract's going to be tame, so they can add a legit big-time player to play next to. Whatever they feel like they need, they can add that type of player and actually do so under the salary cap restrictions that the CBA has employed to make things more fair. So that's why it's such a revolting thing, because Cooper Flagg allows you to win from day 1 until year 15. And so, yes, I would give Cooper Flagg, especially when Kyrie Irving's out, I would give him the ball all the time, because it will only benefit you for not only the next year when they have a chance to win a championship, but the next 15. And it is positively the worst outcome I've ever seen in the lottery. And yes, if the Jazz had picked 5, but it was the Spurs even picking 1 instead of Dallas, I'd be fine. Even though they just got Wembanyama, at least they were a bad team. But Dallas, they purposely lost throughout the season.
No, they didn't purposely lose. They were injured. I went to every Mavs home game. They had lineup times where they didn't even have enough guys on the bench.
See, that's
they
fair.
Played their two-way guy.
But they purposely sold away the guy who could get them to the playoffs in order to then make themselves better. Got hurt, and it was like, oh, what's better, making the playoffs or not? And they were terrible. But also,
they were trying to win, though. They were hurt. I mean, they didn't even have flexibility to where they had like Moses Brown that had a big game, but they couldn't even like sign him to another like 10-day. Like they really ran out of bodies.
They did. It wasn't that part wasn't the most manipulative. But just a couple of years ago, they purposely lost to not make the play-in and got Derek Lively. So it's a team that is constantly rewarded for what I would say is unethical basketball. And in this case, it maybe they really did believe.
Got fined $100,000.
We did, and we got the 5th pick. This is the 5th. Yeah. And honestly, I don't like that the Jazz were manipulating things, but at a certain point, you got to in the NBA. I think if you're going to be in the play-in and purposely lose, that's shameful. But that's beside the point. My biggest point is this is a team that traded away a guy who's been All-NBA 5 of his first 6 years, and then as a reward, get a guy who can do the exact same thing after being that low. So I hate the way the lottery's built. I think the worst possible outcome was Dallas getting the number 1 pick, but the way that the lottery's built is terrible. So this is my rant. I apologize for the rant. I think Cooper Flagg is fantastic, and the Mavericks trading away a generational talent only to get another one bothers me tremendously.
The most interesting thing that could come out of this whole scenario would be the Mavericks winning a championship, Nico Harrison looking right, and all the fans that came to the games with the fire Nico, this, and that. I mean, I was there. I was at the games. I heard the chatter. I mean, to the point where the Jumbotron, they would have to change it real fast. All the heat that he took and rumors about his kids couldn't go to school and people posted his address online. If the Mavericks win a championship within the same timeline that he predicted or mentioned, you talk about some bittersweet Mavs fans. That would just be a crazy story. I hope the Dallas Mavericks are documenting everything right now.
Could you even be happy that happened for him? Like, that's not him who made the right move. That's just the worst miscarriage of justice of a lottery ever. Like, that's not him making the right move whatsoever. That's just pure fortune.
I mean, for him making the move would be because he said the move would be to win a championship. And if he wins a championship in the timeline that he predicted, sadly enough, based on what you're saying, he's not going to get any credit for it.
He shouldn't. He absolutely should not. That's like one sec. That's like saying, okay, I'm going to trade away the franchise, or like I'm going to pay every last dollar I've ever paid and put it on a lottery ticket. And all of a sudden, the final penny that wasn't even yours, you were like, find a penny on the street. And you're like, oh, that one can get me a quarter of a ticket or whatever. I know this is a stupid analogy. And all of a sudden, you're a millionaire and you're like, oh, yep, I'm a genius for it. No, well, I don't think he deserves any credit should it work.
Isn't that how FedEx became FedEx? I mean, are you familiar with the story? The guy that owned FedEx, if I remember correctly, he had one plane and his business was to the point where he needed to have more planes to meet all the demands, but he didn't have the money. He went to Las Vegas and he pretty much gambled on either A, I'm going to lose the company because I'm not going to be able to afford to pay payroll, or I'm going to put the money that I have down. I'm going to go to Vegas. I'm going to gamble. He gambled it. And if I remember the story correctly, he hit big. He was able to buy multiple planes, and FedEx is FedEx today. So are you saying he doesn't get credit for it because that was pure luck?
No, because gambling takes skill. If you're counting cards, good for you. He's not doing any of that. That's the ping pong balls quite literally blown up in the proper order for him.
It was the biggest gamble in the history of trade gambles, if you think about it. Let's finish the rant. Let's finish the rant. So does it really bother you?
My rant's good. I'm done. I just think it's terrible.
You said you'd be more fine with the San Antonio Spurs getting Cooper Flagg than the Dallas Mavericks. You have to really elaborate on that.
At least they were a bad team. At least they were a bad team that way tried to play good basketball. Victor Wembanyama had a blood clot. I'm not going to fault them for not making the playoffs, and they went from 8 to 2. That's way different to me than what the Mavericks did of losing a guy who's 5-time All-NBA by the age of 25 and then getting a number 1 pick. So I would have been far more content if the Spurs won. I still would have been peeved, but not as much. And honestly, that would have been lovely to watch as Victor Wembanyama and Cooper Flagg as a basketball lover. But
I mean, I think the same people would have been conspiracy theory. You know what I mean? Like, I still think it would have had the same, maybe not to you, but the same, though the NBA is rigged. Some of it is just pure luck. And this is a whole different subject. But if you just think about it, like, how in the world did those Lakers and Celtics teams in the early 80s win championships, but they still kept getting top 5 picks?
I agree. I don't like that whatsoever. I'm not much of a conspiracy theorist about the NBA either. That's what bugs me. I'd rather blame it on conspiracy. I'm all about logic here, and I'm just frustrated.
I was looking up how in the world did the Boston Celtics, how are they so good? And then they ended up with Len Bias, where, you know, we all know the Len Bias story. And it's like they had a guy that I think was Gerald Henderson's dad who held out for a contract in 1984, was traded for a first-round pick in 1986, and then it ended up being Len Bias. If he doesn't, you know, whatever happens, that Celtics dynasty could have extended if he lives up to the hype. And I was trying to figure out what would the equivalent of that be? Would that have been like the Nuggets trading KCP for a future pick, and that pick ends up being Dylan Harper, or you know what I mean, or Cooper Flagg? Anyway, with that being said, let's talk about Cooper Flagg's trajectory, his growth rate, and his ceiling. What's his trajectory to you, and who is he ultimately if he reaches his ceiling?
I think he scores like 15 to 17 points rookie year, and he's a good defender. And then I think year 2, he plays next to Kyrie Irving, and I think he's probably like 18 points a game, but it's more efficient, it's more refined because they have another scorer taking up a lot of the basketball. And then year 3 is when he really takes off, and he's a 20-point plus per game scorer, 7 rebounds, 5 assists. And then year 4, you're getting a guy who's an all-NBA talent, 23, 6, and 6, something like that. And I think he only gets better and better year in, year out. And by 22, he's untouchable. He's a guy that will earn a supermax by the age of 22. That's how rare of a player Cooper Flagg is to me. And I think Cooper Flagg, when it's all said and done, will have 7+ All-NBA teams within the first 12 years of his career, if not more. And that might even be first teams. Like, I think he's that good. He's that much of a winner. And there hasn't been a player that I've evaluated. Granted, I'm fairly young in this, but I haven't seen a player that I've evaluated that I believe leads to winning more than Cooper Flagg does. Like, everything he does is all about winning. There have been players that have flashy. There have been players that I love watching more than I liked watching Cooper Flagg, but not so much that I believe, what he does on a basketball court is more conducive to winning than Cooper Flagg.
And for those that wonder, can he win? Can he lead? Because we really have seen him with stacked teams. I mean, that Montverde team had Derek Queen, Rob Wright, Liam McNeely. I feel like I'm missing somebody. Asa Newell. Yep. That team was stacked. When we first saw him emerge, he was on the Team USA team that was loaded. Yeah, when he played on at the EYBL 16s with that main team, that team wasn't loaded. And now he ends up going into another situation where he has Anthony Davis and hopefully Kyrie Irving. So the questions about, can he lead a team that is not stacked? That's something that I think some of his doubters will always question, because he's been in situations where he's had really, really good talent around him. He's not going to a situation where the cupboard is bare, which I think Utah or, maybe the Wizards or the Nets or, some of those teams would have been the teams where he would have been able to prove it, because I think if he goes to San Antonio, doesn't have to be the best player. If he goes to Philadelphia at 3, doesn't have to be the best player right away. If he goes to, obviously Dallas, Charlotte, yes, but he would be the man there. He would be the most popular guy, but he wouldn't even have to lead that team in scoring. So with that being said, I can see how some of the people who are looking to just pick him apart, which I think is just totally unfair, are going to say, you know what? He ended up in another good situation to where he has a bunch of talent around him.
Yeah, he's fortunate to have all that, but I listened to an interview with Con Knipple, and Con talked about how they played pickup in the offseason, and Cooper and him were on the same team. They won all their games. So Cooper said, you know what, I'll switch teams. Went to the other team that was inferior and won all its games. So I think Cooper Flagg just wins. Like, I don't really care what team he's on. He's the type of guy, you could have put him on a lot of teams, and I think they could have made the Final Four. That's how good he is.
Well, that wraps up this episode of the Locked On NBA Big Board Podcast. Once again, thank you for making this your first listen of the day. Hopefully everyone has a great weekend. We are out of here.